My name is Marcus Bennett, and I'm 32 years old. For most of my life, I've been what you'd call the forgotten middle child. Not the golden daughter like my older sister Sarah, not the protected baby like my younger brother Jake. Just there. Quiet, responsible, never asking for much. And because I didn't demand attention, I never got any. But there was one place where I felt like I mattered. My grandmother Elena's house in Riverside, California. It was this beautiful old craftsman home with a wraparound porch and century-old oak trees that turned brilliant gold every fall. Grandma Elena would sit in her favorite rocking chair humming old jazz standards and calling me her best listener. She saw something in me that my parents never did. While Mom would roll her eyes when I talked about my computer science classes, and Dad only seemed interested in Jake's baseball games and Sarah's marketing career, Grandma Elena actually listened. She taught me how to tend her rose garden, how to balance a budget, and how to make her famous lasagna that could feed an army. When she passed away 5 years ago, I was devastated. I was broke, working part-time while finishing my degree in San Francisco, and couldn't afford the flight home. My parents didn't offer to help. They didn't even tell me the funeral had been moved up until that morning. By the time I got their voicemail, she was already buried. It was a small family service, they said. Everyone was grieving. It wasn't about you. But it felt like everything was never about me. After graduation, I moved to Seattle and landed a good job at a tech startup. I worked my way up from junior developer to senior engineer, slowly building a life that didn't require their approval or attention. I kept my distance, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. You learn to stop fighting for love when you're tired of losing. I'd still get the occasional family group text, usually when Sarah needed help splitting costs for some vacation rental, or the obligatory happy birthday Marcus message that arrived 6 hours late. I rarely visited, and when I did, I stayed quiet, smiled through their passive-aggressive comments, and left early. But there was always one thread connecting me to them: Grandma Elena's house. After she died, my parents took over the property. They told us kids that Grandma had left everything to them to keep things simple. I didn't question it at the time. What did I know about inheritance law? I was a broke college student drowning in student loans. The house sat mostly empty for years. Occasionally, Jake would crash there when he needed to get his head together after losing another job. Sometimes Sarah used it for her Instagram-worthy wellness retreats when city life got too stressful. I visited once, maybe 2 years after the funeral. It still smelled like Grandma's lavender candles and cinnamon rolls. But something felt hollow, like the house knew it was just waiting to be abandoned. When I asked my parents about their plans, they gave me vague answers about tax complications and considering options. I nodded and let it go like I always did. Last year, everything changed. I found out through a random text from my high school friend Danny, who still lived in Riverside. "Dude saw a for sale sign on your grandma's house. That's crazy. Thought you guys were keeping it in the family." That text hit me like a punch to the gut. I called my mother immediately. "Oh, hi, sweetheart," she answered casually. "Everything okay? You never call? Are you selling Grandma's house?" There was a pause, just long enough to feel deliberate. "Well, yes, we were going to tell you. It's just that you're so busy up there in Seattle and we didn't think you'd be interested." "Interested? It's Grandma's house." "Yes, and we've maintained it for years, Marcus. It's become a financial burden. The market's good right now." I didn't argue, I didn't scream. I just said, "Okay, thanks for letting me know," and hung up. But something inside me had shifted. Not anger, exactly. Clarity. A realization that I'd spent too long letting this family decide what I did and didn't deserve. The next week, I started making calls, quiet ones. I contacted the realtor using my middle name, Bennett Holdings, and introduced myself as a remote investor interested in the property. I flew down to California, put on my best business suit, and toured my grandmother's house like a stranger. Walking through those rooms broke my heart. The garden was overgrown, the wallpaper was peeling, but her spirit was still there in every corner. When the realtor asked if I was serious about making an offer, I smiled and said, "Very serious." I didn't overbid. I didn't get emotional. I used my investment company, Bennett Holdings, LLC, which I'd established 6 months earlier for real estate projects. The paperwork was clean, the transaction was fast, and just like that, I owned my grandmother's house. But I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because Christmas was coming. Like clockwork. Sarah sent out the annual group text in early December. Family Christmas dinner at Mom and Dad's 7 p.m. Dress nice. We have big news to share. Please RSVP. I booked my flight and showed up at their door in Orange County wearing my best charcoal suit, bottle of wine in hand. Jake answered the door, already tipsy from pre-dinner drinks. Well, if it isn't the ghost of Christmas past. Inside their McMansion was decorated like a department store display. Garlands everywhere, twinkling lights, those mechanical Christmas figures that move and play music. Sarah was already holding court in her designer dress, sipping champagne and scrolling through her phone. My parents were in their element, playing the perfect hosts. Dinner started normally enough. Honey-glazed ham, green bean casserole, mashed potatoes. Sarah dominated the conversation with stories about her latest clients. Jake made crude jokes about cryptocurrency investments. I stayed quiet, polite, smiling when expected. Then, somewhere between the second glass of wine and dessert, Mom looked up from her plate with this satisfied smirk and said, "Oh, we finally sold Grandma's house last week. The buyers were so eager. Thank goodness we don't have to deal with that old place anymore." Sarah laughed, twirling her fork in the air. About time. That place was such a money pit. And honestly, Marcus was never going to inherit it anyway. I set my wine glass down slowly, letting the moment stretch. Jake chuckled and added, "Good thing too." He probably would have turned it into some weird tech bro compound. I looked around the table at these people who always assumed I'd stay quiet, who thought I'd just accept whatever scraps they threw my way. Then I picked up my wine glass, took a calm sip, and said, "That's interesting. I hope you enjoyed the money since I'm the one who bought it." The table went completely silent. Mom's face froze mid-smile. Sarah blinked in confusion. Jake furrowed his brow like he was trying to solve a complex math problem. And I just sat there calm as ever, watching the truth finally surface. For a long moment, nobody said anything. The only sounds were the humming of the heater and Sarah's fork clattering against her plate as it slipped from her hand. Finally, Sarah let out a nervous laugh. "Wait, what do you mean you bought it?" "I mean exactly that," I said evenly. "I'm the buyer, through my company Bennett Holdings." Dad leaned forward, confused. "That's impossible. The buyers were from Washington State, some investment group. Bennett Holdings, LLC. That's me," I explained. "It's my investment company, completely legal and above board." Sarah's face was turning red now. "Why would you do that behind our backs?" That word, our, echoed in my head. Like I was somehow trespassing on their property even though I'd never been included in any family decisions. "It was listed for sale," I said with a shrug. "I made an offer. It was accepted. Nothing behind anyone's back." "But we could have gotten so much more if we'd known it was you," Mom blurted out. And there it was. The truth. It wasn't about Grandma's memory or family legacy. It was about money. Dad crossed his arms, trying to regain control. "So what's your plan here? You bought it just to spite us?" "No," I said calmly. "I bought it because it meant something to me. And because none of you seemed to care what happened to it." Jake snorted. "So you overpaid for that old dump just to feel something?" "Actually," I replied, not even looking at him. "I got it below asking price. Your realtor wasn't very good at vetting offers." The rest of dinner was tense and uncomfortable. Sarah stabbed at her food angrily. Jake kept checking his phone like he wanted to disappear. Mom excused herself to check on dessert and didn't come back for 20 minutes. Dad just sat there, jaw clenched, drinking his scotch in silence. When I got up to help clear the table, Sarah grabbed my wrist. "Why didn't you tell us?" she hissed. "You think this makes you better than us?" I looked her straight in the eye. "No, I think it means I stopped waiting for permission to do what felt right." After that explosive Christmas dinner, I didn't hear from my family for weeks, but something was still bothering me. The way Mom had laughed when she said I was never going to inherit it anyway. The speed with which they'd sold the house once I started asking questions. So I started digging into public records. What I found changed everything. The property transfer from Grandma Elena to my parents hadn't gone through probate like a normal inheritance. Instead, they'd used something called a quit-claim deed just 3 weeks after her funeral. That raised a red flag. Why use a quit-claim deed instead of letting it go through the normal legal process? I called the county records office and asked about Grandma's will. The clerk helped me request a copy of the probate filing. When that manila envelope arrived in my mailbox, I opened it with shaking hands. and there, in black and white, was something that made my blood run cold. I, Elena Bennett, being of sound mind and memory, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. To my beloved grandson, Marcus James Bennett, I leave my home at 247 Maple Street and all its contents, as he has always valued the history and heart of our family. I trust he will preserve what matters most. I had to read it 3 times before I believed it. Not my parents, not Sarah or Jake, me. Grandma Elena had left me the house and my family had never told me. They'd lied to my face, made me feel like I didn't matter, all while knowing they had stolen something that was rightfully mine. I immediately contacted a lawyer named Jennifer Walsh, who specialized in estate fraud. When I showed her the documents, her eyes widened. "Let me guess," she said, flipping through the pages. "Your parents never submitted this version to probate court." "Looks like it," I said, my voice tight. She nodded slowly. "They probably filed an older version that left everything to your mother. But this version is newer, dated just 1 month before your grandmother passed away. If we can prove this was her final will and that the quitclaim deed was fraudulent, you have a very strong case." We started building the case methodically. I reached out to Grandma's church friends who remembered her talking about updating her will. Her accountant provided emails where she'd specifically mentioned leaving the house to me. Most damning of all, the notary who supposedly witnessed the quitclaim deed had no record of ever signing anything related to my grandmother's property. It was fraud, plain and simple. The court case took place 6 months later. Armed with the real will testimony from Grandma's friends and proof that the deed was forged, we had an airtight case. Judge Patricia Kim was thorough and fair. After reviewing all the evidence, she ruled in my favor on every count. The original will was reinstated. The fraudulent deed was declared invalid, and my parents were ordered to pay $75,000 in damages, the difference between what they sold it for and its current market value. But more than that, the court awarded additional funds to a nonprofit I'd started in Grandma's honor. The Elena Foundation, dedicated to preserving family homes and protecting elderly people's final wishes. My parents sat in that courtroom looking like they'd aged 10 years. They never made eye contact with me. When the judge announced her decision, they simply gathered their things and left without a word. The fallout was immediate and deeply satisfying. Word spread quickly through their social circles in Orange County. Within 2 weeks, Mom was forced to resign from the Riverside Community Foundation board she'd chaired for 8 years. Apparently, board members were uncomfortable being associated with someone who'd committed estate fraud. Sarah's luxury wedding planning business. Elegant Moments took a major hit when 3 clients pulled out after reading about the case in the Orange County Register. Her Instagram following dropped from 15,000 to 8,000 in a month. Her desperate posts about family betrayal and cancel culture only made things worse. Dad's real estate investment group quietly asked him to step back from active deals within 30 days. Turns out, investors don't like working with people who forge legal documents. As for me, I moved into Grandma's house that spring and began a complete restoration. Over the next 8 months, I invested $45,000 of my own money, bringing it back to its former glory. I turned the upstairs bedroom into a community library where neighbors could come read and share memories. I replanted her rose garden exactly as she'd had it and restored the wraparound porch where she used to sit every evening. The Elena Foundation grew beyond my wildest dreams. In just 2 years, we've helped 43 families preserve their loved ones' homes and prevented 12 cases of estate fraud. The foundation now has a $200,000 annual budget and employs 3 full-time staff members. Local media covered our work extensively, and I've been invited to speak at conferences about protecting elderly people's rights. On the 2nd anniversary of the court victory, I hosted a small gathering on Grandma's porch. About 20 people came. Close friends, foundation volunteers, and some of her old neighbors who shared beautiful stories about her kindness. As the sun set behind the oak trees, I sat in her old rocking chair and felt something I'd never experienced before. True peace. Not just because I'd won, but because I'd finally learned to stand up for myself. Around 8 that evening, a familiar car drove slowly past the house. Through the windshield, I could see my parents' silhouettes. They didn't stop, didn't wave, didn't even slow down. They just kept driving into the darkness. I watched them go without any anger or sadness. Then I stood up, walked to the front door, and turned on the porch light. Not for them, but for the community that had embraced Grandma's legacy. Let them disappear into the dark. This house, my house, would always stay bright. Looking back now, I realize this story isn't really about a house or money or even family betrayal. It's about finding your voice when everyone expects you to stay silent. It's about fighting for what's right even when it's uncomfortable. It's about learning that sometimes the family that sees your worth isn't the one you were born into. It's the one you build. Grandma Elena always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. She saw something in the quiet, overlooked grandson that his own parents missed. And in the end, her faith in me became the foundation for everything I built afterward. The Elena Foundation now operates in 5 states, helping families navigate estate planning and protecting vulnerable elderly people from financial abuse. We've saved 87 family homes from being lost to fraud or neglect, and our legal clinic has provided free consultations to over 300 families. Every time we help someone preserve their loved one's legacy, I think about Grandma Elena sitting in her rocking chair humming jazz standards and believing in the power of doing what's right. My family's betrayal taught me something valuable. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. You can choose to stay silent and accept whatever scraps they offer, or you can stand up and demand the respect you deserve. I chose to fight back quietly and legally with dignity and determination. I chose to honor Grandma Elena's memory not just by keeping her house, but by using her story to help others in similar situations. And every evening, when I sit on that wraparound porch watching the sunset through the oak trees, I know she's proud of the man I became. Not despite my family's treatment, but because of how I rose above it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living so well that your success speaks louder than any words ever could. The house on Maple Street stands as proof that truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep some people try to bury it. And sometimes if you're patient enough and brave enough to fight for what's right, justice really does prevail. Story 2. I was rejected by my family since I chose to purchase a van home rather than contribute to my brother's master's degree. Do not identify as our daughter. According to my mother, my brother arrived at my vehicle 3 days later. I was rendered stunned by what transpired next. I was forced to phone the police. Hello, this is Helena. Up until last week, I considered myself to be a competent adult at the age of 24. The ceiling fan in my 300-square-foot studio produces that menacing clicking sound you hear in horror movies just before the electricity goes out. I hardly ever sleep since I work full-time as a billing assistant and study web design part-time at night. However, I had a strategy. A modest, low-key strategy, devoid of confetti or balloons. All I have is a slow-burning ambition of leaving my expensive renting and eventually owning something that was rightfully mine. For 3 years in a row, I had saved $19,000 and earned $19,000 by avoiding pleasant activities, cutting coupons, and foregoing vacations. My parents were aware of it. Roger, my older brother, did the same. It was Sunday supper, as usual that evening. Something from the freezer that looked like it had lost a battle was warmed by Dad. Mom uncorked her second Riesling bottle, as he explained that true leadership starts in middle management. Roger was already 2 drinks deep, as if it were divinely inspired wisdom. I sat silently, mentally practicing the sentence. I purchased a vehicle. I purchased a vehicle. I purchased a vehicle, when Dad finally inquired. What's new with you then? I inhaled deeply and proceeded. Yes, I did purchase anything. Mom looked up. A van, huh? The hush was sudden and abrupt. Roger's eyebrows went up. For example, when camping numb to occupy. Dad scowled. What was the amount you spent? I said 19 grand. Nearly all of my funds. Mom did laugh. You're kidding. I'm not. I had been searching for some time. It's in fair condition. I'm going to convert it. Roger blinked. He was homeless for $19,000. It isn't. I caught myself. That isn't it. All I have to do is save money on rent till I graduate. Dad scowled. And you did this without first speaking to us. I own the money. Mom reclined in her seat. We believed you were putting money down for something worthwhile. I gave a shrug. This is true. Roger's head was already wobbling. And now I'm trying to save money for graduate school. You had the opportunity to assist? You purchased a rust bucket instead. I was unaware that I was obligated by law to sponsor your CV. He doesn't mean that. Mom cut in. We've always been there for one another. Families operate in this manner. Funny, I remarked. It didn't go both ways as I recall. Don't begin. Dad forewarned. I simply sat there and swallowed it instead. Roger gave a sound that sounded like laughter. Look, you could have just said that you did not want to be on the squad. I don't believe that living on the cheap is a personal betrayal. Mom yelled, you didn't just make a bad financial choice. We all looked silly because of you. I was really taken aback by that one. Really? I said. She said. What are people meant to believe? Are we unable to prevent our daughter from being homeless? It's not a sidewalk, it's a vehicle. The point isn't that. I didn't respond. Roger's whining twisted. I mean, this will also damage my reputation. You are aware of how close-knit the financial community is. Wow, I said. I mean, this isn't even about me anymore. Dad looked at me for a long time. Your wager was successful. I created a betting website. From the plywood, I mumbled. There is storage below it. No one chuckled. We simply feel let down, Mom remarked in a flat, quiet voice. You could have contributed to something greater. However you made this decision, I hoped you would appreciate my effort. Silently, I said. Roger got up. Helena, we all have to give up something. Mom didn't even look at me when she said it, so perhaps it's time you realized that. Don't call yourself our daughter if you want to live in a van and be homeless. Silence fell. I kind of waited for her to retract it, or at least take a peek at me. Dad, Roger, anyone. It was a joke to say that it wasn't her intention. However, no one spoke. Most likely, it lasted 5 seconds. It seemed like a year. Slowly, I nodded. Correct. I only stated that. No sarcasm, no speech. Perfect. After that, I grabbed my coat and walked out. There was no drama. No one followed. All I had to do was snap the door shut behind me. I can't even recall the drive back. I was seated in the van the next thing I knew. The flimsy curtain I attempted to hang had fallen drooping as if it gave out in the middle, and the mattress was still leaning against the wall. I took a seat on the ground. Splinters and chilly metal, no insulation yet. I refrained from crying. I wasn't upset, simply exhausted. In a manner I couldn't quite describe, it was heavy. Perhaps it's strange, but when I was 10, I taped cutout stars to the ceiling of my bedroom because it brought back a random memory. I was assisted by my parents in hanging fairy lights. I recall thinking, wow, they truly care about me. Since then, that memory has been carrying a lot of the burden. Perhaps too much. The worst part, I assumed, would be being disowned. As it happens, that was only the start. I don't recall returning to the van by car. All I can recall is sitting there in the dark with my jacket still zipped and my forehead against the chilly window. Like a movie I'd seen 100 times, but just now I kept playing The Supper over and over again. I get it. Don't call yourself our daughter if you want to live in a van and be homeless. That flat laying so easy. She read it as if it were a weather report. I refrained from crying. It would have been too obvious. I sat there wondering how someone could be so deeply offended by such a few sentences. What's the worst? I didn't see it coming. I honestly assumed, mistakenly maybe, that they'd be a bit startled, maybe even uncomfortable with my choice. The proud, in their way. I wasn't asking for balloons or a procession. I just hoped they'd recognize the work that I'd spared. That I was planning for something. That I was attempting to create a life. But instead, I got wiped. And maybe if that had been the only thing, just the meal, just the statement, I'd still be here in a confused fog trying to rationalize it. But the reality is, this didn't come out of nowhere. I am 6 years younger than my brother Roger. My parents claim that he is their family's investment property. A legacy, a sure return. He was prearranged. No, I wasn't. I thought we were close when I was younger. Occasionally, when his buddies were around, he allowed me to accompany them. That seemed significant to me. However, I believe that even in those days, I was more of a mascot than a sister. Roger always came first, and not in a corny manner. Oh, he gets everything first since he's older. In other words, everything literally goes to Roger. They paid for tutors, preparatory classes, and networking events, and they assisted him in getting into his ideal school, when he attended Columbia to study finance. When I was in high school, I acquired a part-time job and gave half of my income to his books and rail passes since my mom said it was a family effort. My dad said, "You'll have more options, Picard," when I inquired about saving for my own future. "Roger will assist you once he's set up." He didn't. He hasn't yet. However, each time I brought it up, I received a reminder to exercise patience. "Helena, he's under a lot of strain. Your turn will come." It was my time to enroll in a community college course, which I paid for each month. No laptop was given to me. A dusty desktop that I found on Craigslist was utilized. My mother told me it was horrible timing when I asked if they would assist me with my tuition, even if it was only a little. Roger just received a down payment from us. As if there had been a weather delay, she remarked, "We will get back to you." All my life it has been the trend. They presented it all as a group decision, a shared pot. If we all pitch in now, Roger can prosper. Later on, we all gain from it. But eventually turned into a ghost, a term that keeps me silent. I was convinced for years, which is what kills me. I thought I was benefiting from aiding him, that we worked as a group, that if I simply continued to work, smile, and bear the burden. After a while, they turn around and state, "Hey, Helena, now is your turn." They didn't. They didn't assist me with moving boxes when I moved into my little studio. They did not contribute to the deposit. When my mother saw it, she genuinely scowled and remarked, "Well, you chose this." Indeed, I did, as there was no other option available to me. The hand-me-downs weren't even given to me. Roger relocated to a posh apartment with a gym. Dad sent me a passive-aggressive text suggesting that furnishing your own area adds individuality, and I took the folding chair from our garage. It's crazy how long I continued to hope what that small voice was saying. Perhaps they will change their minds. At first, you aren't even aware of it, but it keeps you vulnerable and causes you to doubt yourself. And that tenderness. They put it to use. Every group text, every family meal. Some variation of "we're all in this together" was always present. I was never in it, though. I was in orbit around it. For a while, I believed that I was the quiet one, the trustworthy one, and the one who didn't want for anything. However, I now believe that I just learned how to occupy less space. It's similar to that one memory I never let go of. I made these paper stars when I was 10 years old and used them to decorate my room. In fact, my dad helped me tape them up when he passed by. My mother plugged in the string lights she brought in. For a moment, we all sat there and it felt cozy and appropriate. I clung to that as evidence. They do love me, you see. They were helpful to me. They noticed me. I'm not so sure now, though. Perhaps I have been misremembering it. Or perhaps I filled in the blanks because I really wanted to. Perhaps they assisted out of duty or boredom, or because I was the only way they could release their energy that day and Roger wasn't home. I kept thinking that perhaps they would recall that moment when I told them about the van. They could lend a hand once more, or at least be happy. Rather, they referred to it as a shame, error, and an embarrassment. And when Mom claimed I wasn't their daughter anymore, I guess some part of me, some childish part, hoped for someone to say she didn't mean it, for someone to take it back. They didn't. So here I am in a car that still smells like packing foam, and hope attempting to detangle a family that only ever saw me when it was convenient. The toughest thing about understanding you were never the favorite isn't the unfairness. It's the loneliness. You start doubting every embrace, every smile, every good phrase. Was it genuine or just part of the script to keep you useful? To keep you involved in someone else's climb? Sometimes I catch myself still expecting they'll call, that someone would admit we were incorrect. We see you now. But ultimately, I simply want serenity. A peaceful area of the earth that is exclusively mine. Not borrowed, not given a job, not given up for the aspirations of others. The van is just that. Not a revolt, not an emergency. It was just a little obstinate act of creating something for myself. Something that doesn't require my explanation. Something for which I need no apology. Something I own. And it's more than they ever offered me, even if it's only 4 wheels and a wooden bed frame at the moment. That night, I didn't abandon my family. They released me. They'll never acknowledge that aspect. Thursday began strangely quiet. It's like the eye of a hurricane, the type of serenity you can't trust. Or the moment you start telling yourself you forgot to attach the file 15 minutes after turning in your final assignment. Someone knocked on the rear door of the van when I was in the middle of scraping dry caulk off a window frame. There was no need for me to look. Nobody else knocks as though they're due money. He was there when I slid the door open. "Roger, The jacket was good crisp and buttoned down. The face was a mix of smug certainty and sorrow. "Hey, do you have a moment?" he said. I should have declined, but I chose not to. I moved out of the way. He surveyed the area as though he were walking into a museum display. "Whoa, you've been rather busy." I didn't answer. He gestured toward the little bench I had made out of foam and leftover wood. "May I take a seat?" I gave a shrug. He took a seat. I remained upright. Mom's words have been on my mind. He began to discuss disowning you. That was severe. I arched an eyebrow. "That's all." He let out a sigh. "All right, everything went out of control. You've always been the one we could rely on, even though I know I've asked for a lot over the years." Once more that word, count. He answered hastily. "I came to ask for nothing. I wanted to let you know that you were correct to take care of yourself. And this." He pointed to the van. "Although it's different, it's intelligent. No rent, minimalist. It's kind of awesome. I wanted to buy it, but I didn't." I accepted his offer to assist in completing the installation of the second curtain rod. "Like that one time we helped you decorate your room," he said. And I grinned, foolish me. He tightened some bolts, stayed for about 30 minutes, and joked that I ought to make a van life video for his fans. After checking the time, I announced that I had to head out for my shift. I could remain. He extended an offer. "The instructions are taped up in your possession. I'll complete the shelf you began." My stomach churned, but I wanted to think it was true. I gave the keys to him. "When you're done, lock up." He seemed to mean it when he nodded. I saw it before I even got out of the car when I returned. The door was ajar. Only a bit. Only enough to chill the back of my neck. It was a disaster inside. Not the sort of mess that results from being clumsy. No. Oops, I spilled paint kind. The mattress was cut, foam ripped, and spilled over the floor. The seat was pulled from the wall. My storage containers were turned out, dumped, kicked. The curtain rod we hung together bent in half, and the stench acrid like chemical cleanser and something worse. I stood at the doorway for a long time. Long enough for one painful idea at a time, the reality to seep in. It was no coincidence. There was no break-in. I gave him a call. It took 4 rings before he picked up, as casual as ever. "Hello, what is going on?" "The last person in the van was you." "Yes, I did lock myself in." "Why, Roger? Everything has been destroyed." Another silence followed by harsh, low laughing. "Oh, that. Come on, Helena, please. Did you really believe that I was on board with this circus you stated? To get your permission, I stated what you needed to hear. I was unable to talk." "You ought to give me thanks," he continued. "I did you a favor, really. Do you believe that living in a van gives you an air of independence? You appear unsteady as a result." I tightened my jaw. "My house was ruined by you. That was not a house. It was an impending publicity catastrophe. You make us all seem like garbage, and you live in that monstrosity. What happens if someone from my company learns? Or a customer of Mom's?" I tried not to scream as I closed my eyes. "Look," he responded. "I understand. This was what you wanted to prove. It was humiliating. You ought to be happy that I intervened before you destroyed your own life." He hung up after that. Holding the phone as if it might apologize, I stood there for a whole minute. He didn't. The wind shaking the bent paneling and my breath was the only sound, quick and shallow. I don't recall tidying up. Flashes only. I was trying not to cry when I discovered my web design textbooks soaked through tearing open trash bags and removing wet insulation from corners. I did not give my parents a call. Why would it matter? They wouldn't accept my story. They would, or worse, they would also concur with him. I did, however, launch my web browser. That's when I realized something Roger was unaware of. I parked the van in the same lot beneath the same light post each night, the old municipal building next to it. The security camera-equipped one. Not to be safe, not at all. I simply didn't want to risk anything. I had what I needed in an instant. Obtaining the video wasn't difficult. It turns out that the municipal office clerk doesn't ask many follow-up questions when you tell them that your brother destroyed your van and that you have a timestamp and a security post badge number. I completed a form. After a whole day of waiting, it finally appeared. Roger enters, stays for almost an hour, and then leaves like a man who just finished putting out the garbage in this grainy, high-angle video. The rubbish, however, was my life. That next day, I took the video to the police. The cop who was viewing the footage remained silent. Roger just jotted down some notes and nodded at the places where he yanked down the improvised shelf and kicked down one of the cabinet doors. I was really proud of it. Vandalism. He stated that may be criminal mischief. Do you wish to file charges? I blinked. Is it possible not to? He gave a little smirk. Some individuals dislike bringing charges against their relatives. I gazed at the display. Roger walked on my string lights as if they were a personal slight. I believe he relinquished that title. Documents were submitted. The case was opened. At that point, the actual circus began. My parents didn't find out for approximately 48 hours. My mom texted me, "Call me now, family," after calling me 11 times in a row, so I knew. The final word was capitalized as if it were a hostage scenario. She phoned me again when I didn't answer. At last, I answered, "Call 13. Her voice sounded angry and piercing. "How could you harm your brother in this way?" I chuckled. Not a true laugh. When you're at a loss for things to digest, one of those silent, empty ones sneaks out. My vehicle was smashed by him. "He ruined my house," I replied. "Helena, you live in a van. For it, you disown me. Do you recall?" He disregarded that. "Your urgent charges. Are you aware of the potential consequences for his future? He's already on leave while they look into it, as far as I know. A criminal record is given to him. Therefore, he ought not to have damaged someone's property." Calmly, I said, "There are repercussions for actions. I assumed you all enjoyed giving classes." That was not warmly received. Then Dad called. Then Roger himself, who somehow managed to play the victim and attack me in the same sentence in a 3-minute voicemail. Something about how I set him up, how I deceived him. How a pile of wood on wheels was destroying his future because of me. I didn't answer. Not to any of them. The emails then arrived. Suddenly, family members I hadn't spoken to in years had strong opinions and seemed to be pursuing legal action against your brother for calling you unstable before destroying you. Your house is too far away. Blood really is thicker than justice, according to one email. I wasn't sure if I should frame it or laugh. 2 weeks later, the hearing took place. Roger arrived wearing a suit that was probably more expensive than anything I had saved. He never gave me a glance. Simply looked straight ahead as if my presence would tarnish his resume. It didn't take long for the judge. The video was unambiguous. The destruction was widespread. He was mandated to make amends. It costs $18,700 overall. Additionally, because this was not his first outburst of entitlement, it appears that there was an incident at work where HR had been buried. He was put on probation. After a week, my aunt sent me a message that she had heard from others. Roger had discreetly withdrawn his admission. According to her, they are unable to accept students who are on probation or have ongoing charges. He's inconsolable. I didn't answer. I simply gazed at the text. It was finished. The van has vanished. He gave it up for the future. Also gone. I purchased a new vehicle with the reparation funds, one with a functional heater, proper cabinets, and insulation. I came into a mechanic who had previously made furniture, and we created a small 4-wheeled bit of tranquility together. I had completed my web design certificate by the time the seasons changed. I accepted a position with a little organization that didn't care where I resided as long as I had access to Wi-Fi. I parked the van on the edge of a peaceful field with weed-like wildflowers and an apologetic sunrise coming in through the rear window. I discovered others who were similar to me. People who are quiet, those who didn't conform to the norm, those who required breathing room. Some lived in vehicles, while others lived in modest homes. They all had tales to tell. We passed a dented thermos of cocoa around a fire one evening, and I told mine without crying. I didn't have to. Though not frequently, I did occasionally think about my family around the holidays. I nearly texted Roger to find out what job he ended up with after hearing a tune my mom used to hum while cleaning the dishes. 3 years later. My home is still a van. Not for long, but a lot better one. I was able to save sufficient funds for a down payment on a real home. Not big, not ostentatious, but mine. I couldn't have done it if I had continued to rent while awaiting permission. That was never going to happen. I'm moving in next month. My parents are no longer in contact with me. I know they're still informing folks, but not explicitly. I lost contact with the outside world as though I were in the woods barefoot and with a malfunctioning compass. As far as I know, Roger is still employed. Not in the financial industry. Something forgettable and contract-based. He sought to start again after losing the condo and downsizing. I genuinely hope that aspect works out for him. We haven't talked, though. Nor do I believe we ever will. That's what occurred anyhow. He's come this far. I appreciate you listening. Really, I'm not sure. Maybe I went too far. Maybe not far enough. Tell me, please. Drop a remark. And if you appreciate articles like these, press subscribe.